Alvin. Hello, Alvin.
Yes, I can hear you.
You can start in 2 minutes. So that's 3:15.
Okay.
Yeah. Share your screen. Let's be sure that it works.
All right. All right, you can see my screen, right?
Yes, yes. So
Okay.
just start in 2 minutes.
All right. Okay. All right. Hello, guys. Welcome to yet another wonderful course on Zuri. So my name is Alvin, and today we'll be taking you on advanced CSS selectors. So I'll be sharing my screen now. So advanced CSS selectors. So one might ask him or herself, what's really advanced CSS selectors? Well, the course will cover that all, starting from the advanced CSS selectors, and then our area of concentration, what we'll be covering in this course, we'll be talking about the overview, why advanced CSS selectors. And also we'll be covering understanding the specificity and cascade. Also the universal selectors, attribute selector, general sibling selector, child combinator, adjacent sibling selector, residual classes, and residual elements. So these are the overview of what we'll be covering in this course, our advanced CSS selectors. So let's dive right into the overview of the course. So one might ask him or herself why we make use of advanced CSS selector. So whether you write your own CSS or use a framework, and you want to build a nice design system, you need the advanced CSS selectors. And this helps in creating clean web scalable applications. And also understanding these selectors will help you to be specific when writing or creating your web apps. So I know you're probably familiar with most of the selectors, the basic selectors we have, which are your IDs, your classes, and element type. And you've been using it from time to time. So in this course, we'll be covering more of these advanced CSS selectors. So understanding the specificity and cascade. So a key concept of successful setting up CSS selectors is understanding what we call cascade, which is part of the abbreviations of CSS, your cascading style sheet. And when you understand the important use of cascade, you likely must avoid the use of the important keyword in CSS. We are aware about of the important keyword, which comes with an exclamation mark, and then your important word. So when you understand the right use of this cascade and specificity, you most likely avoid the use of that important keyword from time to time. And also, this will help you to specify or at least choose unique IDs which are tailored to write what you are doing. So I will show you an example now. What to mean by being specific when creating your web application. So for example now, okay, let me open the demo. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. So for example, now, when we talk about being specific, I might have an ID. Okay, a div tag with an ID assigned to it. Let me call the ID specific. I'll call the ID specific. Then close off my div. Now inside this div tag, I might have a span elements with item. Okay, let me call this to your class name, which is your item. Fine. So coming to my style sheets, I'll have to do, since I call this an ID, for me to style this, let me list 3 CSS rules. First, my specific, then dot item, which is my class. Then I have to do this color to be red. Then I have to come again, span, then item, or rather dot item, because it's a class, and then color. Let me call this green. And then my last CSS rule, let me just say dot item. Then I will call this color blue. So looking at this, what do you think will be the output? Well, let's look at what we have. I'm using Live Server to display everything I'm doing here. So once we do this, you can see that our color is red. This is because we are specific. We are using our ID. We are targeting right our ID and then the class elements. That's what specific helps you to avoid. So this is this doesn't mean that you have to go all around in your web application adding IDs to all your elements, your selectors, but rather you need to be aware of the impact of this what we call specific. So now we've understood the importance of being specific. It helps you to avoid the use of the important keyword, like I said, and also it helps you to avoid overriding rules in your CSS. Rather, it helps you to go straight to the point and then style your web application. So now let's move over to the first advanced CSS selector I'm looking over today, which is your universal selectors. So these universal selectors is named because it applies to all elements universally. So there used to be recommendations against it, particularly as a descendant, because of performance concerns, but that is no longer a valid consideration. So a better reason to use it is that it has zero specificity when used by itself, meaning that it can be overridden by any single ID, class, element. So what am I saying? For example, now, let me comment this out. For example, now, this is the sign for your universal selector. It comes with a star. And this, I can now define my padding here to be 0, 0, margin to be 0, and then box sizing, the border box. So the work of this, like I said, the universal ethos is that it selects all elements universally and then apply what you define in it, your CSS rules. Like now, it's the star, like I said, is the symbol. It applies the 0 padding to all elements, margin, and then gives me a border, the box size of border box. So instead of adding all these width dimension, adding it one by one in all our elements in our web application, you can just come to our universal selector, then zero them out and all. So that's the work of universal selector. Remember, the sign is a star sign, and it's normally it is being written right above your CSS file. That means I have to come here and paste it in line 1. So this is normally the position when it comes to CSS. So this is the first advanced CSS selector, which is your universal selector, and that is your star. Now the next one is your attribute selector. Your attribute selector. So this is a powerful category, and yet it's often not used to its potential selector. So for you to achieve a nice result for you to exceptionally modify your system and design system or frameworks, the attribute selector is a go-to. So let's look at the practical use of this attribute selector. For example, if I have okay, let me comment this out so it won't show from our output. I have to make this bigger. Fine. So for example, now if I want to, okay, let me have a div, then the span elements in it. Let me call this box 1. Let's make sure it's showing. So right, this is showing on our fine. We have our box 1 here showing. So for me to make use of this attribute selector, I can decide to add something like this. Okay, you know what? Let me not use box. Let me use a button rather for us to see what we have to do. So button, let me just call this toggle. And then I have to come here and call this area expanded. Let me change it to false. Right now I have a button with an area expanded, which is false. And for us to target this using our attribute selector, we will have to come to our CSS. Remember the name we gave it, we called it the area expanded false. Now this is what we normally use when styling our attribute selectors. So I have to copy this and then come to my CSS. So I can come here and then do something like this, a button, then in square brackets, I can now paste my area expanded, which is false. And then I can add a plus sign, okay, dot contents, and then style the way I want. So I can decide to add anything to this depending on what I am doing. So remember, for us to style any attribute selector, we have to assign this to it, our area expanded first, or any other attribute you want to assign to it. And then note the attributes you've given it, and then come to your CSS. You target the elements, the square brackets, you paste the attribute selector, and then you style according to your text, the way you want it to appear. Also, you can use the attribute selector in styling non-navigation links. And then when dealing with non-navigation links, you may have a mix of default links and then links styled at button. So in this case, it is very useful to use the following non-button links and all. So the very thing we need to know that this is the way, particularly we style our attribute selectors. So now the next advanced CSS selector we'll have to look at using our slide is that for the general sibling selector. Now one might ask ourselves, what is the general sibling selector? So the general sibling selector selects the defined elements that are located somewhere after the preceding elements and that are within the same parent. Now, for example, now we might have a D tag and a paragraph with an image in it, and want to style all images located somewhere or elsewhere inside the paragraph, which are still inside that same element, and use the general sibling selector to do that. So what do we mean? Let's take a look at the practical use of this general sibling selector. For example, now I might have my article. Then paragraph. Okay, let me call this paragraph. And then, okay, my H2. Okay, call this heading 2. Okay, and let me just call this my span. Okay. Okay, let me just call this span element. So that's fine. So if I want to style this particular span elements in this, please, just all the span elements. Okay, for example, let me just duplicate this to be 3 for us to see how the general sibling selector, sibling coordinator works. Let me just duplicate this into 2 places or 3 places. Now, for me to style this, okay, let me comment this out for us to see what we're doing. Now, for me to style this or the span elements only, I can make use of the general sibling selector to span it. So the very first thing I need to do is to target my elements. I can come here in my paragraph, then targeting the span elements. General sibling selector comes with this. I don't know what to call it, but this is how we select all the siblings or all the child elements provided inside a parent's component. So I have to do this and then add this sign and then span. Okay, I want all my span elements to have a background color of red. So you can see that we have our span elements being colored red right at our output. So remember what I did. For me to have I had an article, then paragraph, heading, and span, and duplicated into 3 places. Now for me to target just the span elements inside that parent's inside the parent's components, I had to do this: the paragraph, then the general sibling selector sign. Like I said, I don't know what to call it, but this is how it looks like. And then it's your span element which you want to target, and then added the background color of red. So you can see that this helps us to select elements that are located somewhere after a paragraph or within the parent component. Now we are moving. Let's look at the next one. We want to check in our advanced CSS selector, which is our child combinator. So this child combinator is very effective at adding just a bit of specificity to reduce scope when applying styles to elements descendants. So what do I mean? It is the only selector that deals with level of elements and can be compounded to select nested elements. So this child combinator, the child combinator scopes descendant styling from any descendant that matches this child selector to only different descendants. So long story short, let's look at the practical use of this child combinator. The child combinator. So let me comment this out so we can see actually how our child combinator works. So I might have another article here. Another article here. Then okay, I'll call this p tag and then hello world. Let me get this up. Hello world. So our hello world is showing. Now, for us to make use of our child combinator to style all our elements, our child combinator comes with a sign which is somewhat like a greater than sign. So this is the sign or the symbol for child combinator selector. So for us to do this, remember we had our article and then the p tag. So all we have to do is now our article, target our article, and then the greater than sign to select all the child elements. And what we want to select is just our paragraph P. Then P. Now let's make this to be a color of okay, green. You can see that our text is now green. So this is what the child combinator does. It helps us to select elements that matches the child selector, which are only direct descendants. Like I say, direct descendants, which are just right inside the parent's component. Now, for example, now if I want to add another one, our H2, and then let me just say my heading 2. Now, for me to target these two, I have to go the same way. My article, which is the parent component, targeting just the H2 elements, and then I have to change this color to red. You can see that my H2 now is now red. So this is what the child combinator selector helps us to do, selecting elements that are direct inside the parent components of that our element. Now, fine. Let's look at the next advanced CSS selector, which is the adjacent sibling selector, which makes use of the symbol that is the plus sign, the adjacent sibling selector. So this adjacent sibling selector, it selects elements that directly follows a preceding or prior defined elements. So remember we've used this somewhere here. We make use of this sign. It comes with a plus sign to apply things to it. So for example, now I might have, for example, now for me to show you the practical use of this adjacent sibling selector. Like I said, it selects elements that directly follows the preceding or prior defined elements. So now, for example, now to show you the practical use of this, let me make this smaller. And then you have to comment this out for us to see how we make use of the adjacent sibling selector. For example, now I might have my nav, and inside my nav, I might have my UL, which are the other lists, and then my LI tags. Okay, let me just make this like, let me duplicate this to 4 places. Well, I will now have our nav and LI tags. What you're trying to do is to show you how we make use of the adjacent sibling selector, or the practical use of this adjacent sibling selector. So here I might have link 1, okay, link 2, link 3, and then link 4. Fine. You can see we have our links in our output. Now, for us to apply or to make use of this adjacent sibling selector, remember we said that we use it to style elements that directly follow the preceding or prior defined elements. So now I have to come to my CSS. I have something like my nav, which I declared earlier, my HTML, then my UL tag, the LI tags, and then plus LI tags. I want to have a margin left of 2 rem. Fine. You can see that the adjacent sibling selector, it selected only the elements right below this, and then gave it a margin. Now, for example, let's just comment this out to see what's really happened. I see that it will return back to default, no margin, nothing there. But once we undo this, I see that it gives it a margin of 2 rem. So this is what the adjacent sibling selector does. It selects element that directly follows the preceding or prior defined elements that we have. So this is the practical use of adjacent sibling selector. Now the next advanced CSS selector, which is the most commonly used ones, are our studio classes. Our studio classes and studio elements. Well, one might ask yourself, what are studio classes? Yeah, we have a lot of studio classes currently, because it has the largest category of all classes. So I will just try to demonstrate how we make use of a few classes in our studio classes. So I'll list most of the used ones here. We have our focus. Okay, I have it on my slide, yes. So these are the majorly used studio classes. The studio classes that we have. We have the link, we have the focus, we have the hover, we have the outline, we have the checked. These are not just the studio classes that we have. We have a lot of studio classes, but from time to time, these are the ones you bump into and make use of them more. So these studio classes, like I said, it has the largest category, and it helps us. The studio classes are keywords that are applied when they match the selected state or context of an element. So they increase the capabilities of our CSS and enable functionalities that in the past, which can be only applied using JavaScript. So with CSS now, using the studio classes, most of the JavaScript features we've been thinking of how to add to our web applications can now be achieved using CSS. So what do I mean? Let's look at the first studio class, which is our link. So this link perhaps this is at times considered as the most confusing selector of the studio classes. So we have to know that not all anchor tags are links. What do I mean? We can have our A tag, just our A tag is. So this is an anchor tag. Let me comment this out. So we'll talk about the studio classes and then you see what practical applications of them. Now, like I said, not all anchor tags are links and not all links tags. So these are anchor tags, our A tags is an anchor tag. I can have anything here, my link, my text one, X1. So you can see that it will display, but when we move over to that, it's not a link, it's not clickable, nothing could be done to that. But now when we come to this one, for example, now let me just add this leading us to nowhere, and then my text 2. Fine. So you can actually see the difference of what I mean by not all anchor tags are links. So this very first one, there's no link to it. It doesn't take us anywhere, just like a dummy text. Once you click on it, nothing will happen. But this one, when we move over to it, you can see that down we see something like our local host taking us to index.html, and then the destination I added, which is our hashtag. So this selector selects only those having the anchor ref tag. That's coming to this example that I gave. The selector, when we use the link tag, it selects only those which are links, meaning that it will neglect this one and then pick up this one and then style to our taste. So for example, now we have this here already. Now let's try styling this using our link tag, like we said. So I can come to my CSS and then my A and then the colon. Yes, one thing to know that when we want to make use of this our studio classes, it comes with one colon. So once one colon and then you apply what you said. So we want to make use of the link only, since we want to style our link. So I can call my link a color of from hash ff 000, which is red, and then my text decoration be none. Fine. You can see that the underline here has disappeared. So okay, let me comment this out for us to get our proper styling. Fine. So you can see that it's the color, it came out, the color that we gave it came out right immediately. When we refresh, just notice what happened. You can see that it's just a matter of split seconds. It changes to red and then back to its normal color because this is a link. So now, what about the text decoration? You know, normally links comes with the default underline to show that it's a link. Let me comment this out for us to see. You can see that this is a text decoration underline. So when we use our studio classes, which is the link tag we are talking about, to style this, then text decoration none, it will take the underline off. Then we can style to our text. We can still add background if we want. Background to be okay, purple. You can see that our background now is purple. Let me make this fine. So this is all about the link tag. It selects only the elements that have the href. So once we have a link and want to style it, it will make use of this studio class, the link tag. Remember that I said it comes with your elements and then a colon, then the link, then you style to your text. Now the very next one we want to check under the studio classes is the visited link. So this visited selector, it selects only links that have already been visited or clicked by the browser, just like the name implies, visited. So it picks only the elements that have been clicked upon by the user on the browser or has been visited by the browser. So it's meant to help users to distinguish the difference between links that they have visited and that which they have not visited. Okay, take for example now, I might have a p tag and then an anchor ref. Remember, okay, I'll add, okay, this. Then, okay, let me just see this, my first page. Let me call this my first page. Okay, let me get rid of this styling for us to see what we are doing. So I have to comment this out for us to see what we're doing. Fine. So you can see that we have our link with my first page. Now for me, okay, let me just create another link for us to see when it is being visited or not. So I have to paste this here. I might call this HTTPS. Let me just direct this one to Google. Fine. So I'll be taking us to Google. Okay, that's fine. So now for me to style this, okay, let me just give this a class for us to actually differentiate what we are styling. So I can come here to give this a class and call this link 1, and then come here, let's call this one link 2 class. Okay, link 2. Okay, that's fine. So we now have two different classes, differentiating them. So for me to style this, I can come to my CSS, and then it's my A tag, a colon, just like I said for studio classes. Then I can grab my link a dot, or rather, let me just style this first, a dot link 1. Let me just call this color to be green. Let's take this to Zuri.team. That's fine. So our first one is green, and then a dot link 1. Then with our studio class, which we want to check this, that is the visited. I can add the visited. I want to change the color once I have visited it to white. Now for my second one, I'll copy the same thing, but just change the classes. So I have to change this to link 2. Change this color to red. Then I have to change this to when visited, I want it to be black. That's fine. So once I refresh, now let me visit my second link, which is taking us to google.com. So you can see that we are now on Google landing page. Now let's return to this, and let's refresh the page. I see that it's showing you some purple, showing that the link has been visited by that link 2. Okay, sorry, I have to do this link 2. Let's try it again. Now we're on Google page, and let's go back. So I said that it's purples out, it grays out that the link has been visited. Now what about this first one? So you can see that they're all grayed out. Normally on default, the browser shows you that the link has been visited by graying it out to purple. So you can actually override this browser style by being specific to your CSS. So what this link is just telling you, just to show you how to style your elements when they are being visited. For example, now, you know, when you visit, for example, now google.com, or let me just do search for Zuri training or Zuri team to show you how Google makes use of these visited links or studio classes to help you show pages you visited. Now, for example, now, okay, let me just click on the first link, and then it will take me to Zuri landing page. Then once I come back to my landing page and then refresh the page, or no need of refreshing itself, you see that it's already, the color is no longer blue, but rather purple, to show that we've already visited that link. So this is what Google is using, it's making use of this studio class, which is our visited class. So remember, we target our links and then make use of our colon, then the studio class, which is for visited, to style it out. Now, the next studio class we'll be looking at is what we call the hover. That's the hover effects, or the hover class. So this hover class is in CSS, it selects elements when the mouse cursor is currently over them, just like it says hover, over them. So it's commonly associated with links, buttons, and all. So what do I mean? Okay, having this now, for example, now, okay, let me just make use of a button this time around for us to see clearly what we are doing. Okay, so I have a button which says click me. Okay, let me duplicate these buttons to two places. First one, click me, and second button. Let me refresh. Fine, we have our button, our click me, and then the second button here. So for me to apply this studio class, which is our hover effect or hover, I have to remember we made use of button. So we have to first of all pick the element we want to apply that style to. So button, I have button, then it's our studio class, which is our column. Now we have to look for hover. So we can see that we have hover in the list. So hover, once the cursor to change to pointer when we hover on it, and once the should I say background to be red when we hover on it. So you can see that once I hover on the buttons, we have these effects. See, our cursor is no longer, it's not a pointer, but when we hover on it, it changes to pointer, something like a hand coming up. And then with our color applied to it, I can still style my color of those buttons to be green if I want. So it applies. So you can see that our button is green. I mean, the text is green. Let me comment this out for you to see clearly. See, our text is green. So this cover effect, like I said, it selects elements when the mouse is over them. So currently our mouse is over it, that's why we're getting this effect. And when we hover out, you can see that the effect returns to default. So this is what the hover studio class is doing for us. So the next one we have to look at is the focus. That's the focus studio class. So the focus studio class in CSS is used for styling an element that is currently targeted by the keyboard or activated. So what do I mean? Here's the practical application of it. I have to come down here. Let me make use of a text area for us to see very well what we want to do. Okay, a text area, and then just put the text, or let me rather use a placeholder. Okay, let me just say in this placeholder, click focus. So let me bring this down for you to see what I'm doing. Fine. So for us to apply the focus effect, like I said, this focus, it only comes up when the keyboard or element is being activated, when it hits on it. So for me to apply my CSS styling, which is for the studio class for focus, I have to target my text area. Remember, I used the text area. So I can come to my CSS, have something like a text area, which I use, my studio class selector, and then focus. Once when we focus or when we click on it, like I say, when a keyboard or mouse is being clicked on it, it activates. Once when we click on it to activate this focus, making our background, inner background to be blue, or let me say light blue. So fine. You can see when we just click on this, it changes its color. Now when we come out of the text area, it returns back to default. So it only activates when our keyboard or our mouse clicks on it. So this activates now. So that's how this hover effect works. So there are tons of these studio classes, but the ones we cover so far are most likely the ones we'll be using from time to time. So for example, to show that we have a list of studio classes, I see that with my VS Code, I have a lot of studio classes. Starting from my focus, visible, full screen, and all down to the very first one is unending. That's it. So these we did from studio classes are the ones most likely you'll be using from time to time. The first one, which is your link, your visited. Second one, the hover effects, the focus, and all. So that's what you'll be looking at and what you'll be using from time to time. So the very last thing we look at in this advanced CSS selector is what we call our, styling elements according to your state. So most likely, once you get a hand of this your studio classes, which are your visited, your hover effects, your focus, the visited, and all. You can style elements according to their states. You can see that this is activated for focus. We've already started according to our face. You can still add more features if you want. Once the color of our text, once we click on it to change to brown. So you can see that anything I type in here is now brown in color. But once I go out of it, it changes back to default, which is black. So far, what have we covered? Let's go back to our slide to see what we've covered so far. We started with the area of concentration, what we'll be doing. We got to know that being specific in our CSS will help us to actually create web apps which are scalable, which are neat, and not making use of the important keywords to make our app not look good in the eye. Now we talked about the overview of what we cover, and then we moved over to our first advanced CSS selectors, which is our universal selectors. And remember, the sign is the star. It's a star sign, something like, okay, let me call it a star. And the practical application of it, you actually select every element and then override anything given to it. It's not that you can't still apply your styling to other elements. This is a universal selector. You can still do that. The universal selector is flexible and you can do whatever you want. Now we talked about the attribute selector. These attribute selectors are very, very important, especially when you want to style something like your classes or your anchor ref tags, your link tags, and all. So, attribute selector will actually help you to style elements which are related to class names or single class names, and we make use of it with your class name, and then being in square brackets. For you to apply your attribute selector, you have to know your class name, and then in square brackets, you apply whatever you want to do. Now we talked about the general simply selector. The general simply selector, like we said, it selects the defined elements that are located somewhere after the preceding elements that are within that parent component. So if you want to style any elements, just those elements which are centered or wrapped into a parent component, you can make use of this general sibling selector. Remember, we talked about you have to target the parents component first, then the class or elements you want to style. So you make use of this general assembly selector just to style elements that are predefined or located within that same parent component. Now, what about the child selector? We talked about the child selector, which is sign, which makes use of the greater than sign. So it's used to it's a combinator descendant styling from any descendant that matches the child selector that are direct to the descendant. So what do I mean? So for you to style elements which are right inside your parents components, you want to pick elements which are directly, like I said, directly right inside your parents component, you can make use of the child combinator selector, your parents folder, and then your parent elements, then the styling or the elements you want to target, and you style to your text. It comes with a greater than sign, like we all said. Now, what about the adjacent selector? The adjacent selector is very, very powerful and not really used by people. So this adjacent selector selects element that directly follows the preceding element. So the sign is the plus sign. So any element that directly follows the preceding elements, it selects that, and then you apply your styling. Now, what about studio classes? The studio classes, which is the last one we talked about, very, very large. It's a large family of classes. But we talked about the most common one you've been using from time to time, which are your links, your visited, your hover, your focus, and so many of them. So you can actually go over the list of studio classes. They are not just limited. What you did are not just limited. You can actually try practicing them on your own, starting from the very first advanced CSS selector that we did. So this is the list or the much we can take. I don't know if you have any question you can as well ask in our front-end channel, and we'll attend to you. Thank you very much for coming to the class, and we look forward to the next class where we'll discuss about the schedule elements, which is still part of our advanced CSS selector. The studio elements, which are large, is also a large family too, just like the studio classes. But in our next class, we will be covering our studio elements and all. So thank you very much for coming to the class, and see you next time.
Are you sure about that?